Chris Lengquist once again to talk to you about the 4 benefits of real estate investing. And I am fascinated about how many people don't know these benefits. And if you don't know the benefits of real estate investing, you don't know whether you should be or should not be putting some of your money into that investment vehicle. There are 4 benefits to real estate investing: cash flow before taxes, principal reduction, tax advantages, and the fourth one, the biggest one, can be appreciation. Now, we're going to go into all 4 of these as we go along today, and we're going to break them down so that you know exactly how to measure the returns of your next real estate investment. Your income is really anything that has to do with money coming in. Usually that's your rents. It could also be late fees, laundry facility fees, parking fees, whatever income you have coming in on that place, that counts as your income. It's really not that hard. Your expenses, a lot of people like to glean over, but let's not forget what all of the expenses might be. Expenses include things like vacancy. You definitely don't want to forget about vacancy, and you want to be realistic about the vacancy in the neighborhood that you're buying in. Some neighborhoods might be a 5% vacancy neighborhood. Some neighborhoods might be a 20% vacancy neighborhood. Just be realistic when you're figuring in your expenses. Other expenses that include insurance, utilities. A lot of times people don't take into account utilities. Utilities, what if the place is vacant? Who's paying the utilities? That's right, you are. You could also have other reasons you're paying utilities. Maybe you have a 4-plex or a 8-plex and you're wondering about the common area. Well, the common area is generally paid by you. You might even have tenants that can't get utilities in their own name. So you need to definitely account for utilities in that particular situation. Probably want to account for it in your rents as well. You're going to have other expenses like repairs. A newer property probably won't need that many repairs at first. An older property, if you've rehabbed a place, no matter how good the rehab is, I'd put in an extra, certain percentage there to make sure that you're going to be okay that first year, because they're going to find more things once somebody actually lives in the property. You're going to need to account for I think I already said insurance. Well, you got insurance, property management. If you're going to manage the place yourself, who's going to do the advertising? You've got to account for that in your expenses. So let's kind of follow this along here real fast. All of your income minus your vacancy would be your gross income. All of your expenses added up should probably add up to somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 36%. At least that's the mean that I find for my properties and the properties of most of my clients. 35 to 36% should be your expenses. How do I come to that? I take my vacancies, my property management, my insurance, my repairs, my utilities, everything that I can think of as an expense. I add those up and I divide those by the income. If it's less than 30%, you're probably being a little bit too hopeful on the property. Maybe you've got some rose-colored glasses on and you really want that house. But I think maybe you're being a little bit too Pollyanna-ish about that. If you're over 40%, well, you might be being a little bit negative. But let's be real about the numbers. That's the only way we're going to come to a real net operating income. That's an important term for you. That's how a lot of your measurements are calculated. So you're going to take your gross income and you're going to subtract your expenses, all of your expenses, and you're going to end up with your net operating income. Then from that net operating income, you're going to subtract your annual debt service. So you take your principal and your interest and you take that away from your net operating income. Whatever's left, that's your cash flow before taxes. So it's not really complicated. You take all your income, subtract all of your expenses, and whatever's left over is your cash flow before taxes. But let's be realistic about what the expenses are. Let's be realistic about what the rents are. So many of our investment matrix return numbers are built around that net operating income, and the only way you're going to know whether this is a good property or bad property is if you use real numbers. So put your boots on the ground, find out what the real rents are, find out what the real vacancies are, and then whatever's left from that is your gross operating income. Do some real research on what your expenses are going to be. What are the taxes? What's the insurance? What's the property management? What's the utilities? What are the repairs? What are the miscellaneous costs that might go along with owning this property, like HOA fees, lawn cuttings, things like that? That would be your expenses. Subtract your expenses from your gross operating income. You're down to your net operating income. Then you take your annual debt service, you subtract that from your net operating income, cash flow before taxes. I went over it really fast there at the end, but that's 3 times I've gone over it in this little segment. Follow along on the little sheet that's at the end of this, and you're going to be in good shape. That's how you calculate cash flow before taxes.